Hello, and welcome to the Imposter Syndrome Network podcast, where everyone belongs, especially if you think you don't. My name is Chris Grundeman, and I'm here with my exceptional co-host, Zoe Rose.
Hey!
This is the Shala episode, and I know you're going to love it. Shala is a passionate associate cloud architect with over 8 years of experience working in information technology. Hey, Shala. Would you please introduce yourself a bit further to the Imposter Syndrome Network?
Hello, I'm Shala. Folks may know me across social media as Gifted Lane, and that's me. And so I like just kind of sharing my journey. When I first got on social media, I was talking about network engineering because that's what I was passionate about. Went after my CCNA. Actually did my CCNA 5 years after working as a network engineer. And when I got that CCNA, I fell out of love with network engineering. And now I'm in cloud.
Awesome. Now, one thing before we dive into the rest of this that I did notice when we were doing kind of our pre-recording research is A, your LinkedIn profile is awesome, very impressive, and quite thorough, describing your experience, while also being B, listing none of the company names, right? So your whole career, which is not totally, I don't want to say it's not normal, but it's not something I see every day. So I was just wondering, is that because you're like legally or otherwise required not to mention those company names? Or is this just a personal preference?
I think the more I dive into the security space, that has a lot to do with it. But more importantly, what happened is some of the companies I work for were really big names. And I would have people randomly message me on LinkedIn saying, hey, I got an interview with such and such company. Can you help me get in? And I'm like, no, I don't even know you. Like, I don't even know how I got myself in. Like, start there. So, and then I was just like, you know what? A ton of people are starting to follow my profile, which I think is awesome. And I'm like, just pay attention to the things that I do and not the companies I work for. So I was just like, you know what? Company A, company B, that's just what it's going to be.
But that's very impressive. Like sometimes people tend to, what's it called? Name dropping, isn't it? Where it's like, oh, I know this person or I work for this company. Yeah, but you're getting there on your own actual skills.
Yeah, and I don't want to name drop. So I'm just like, it doesn't matter.
The other benefit is you probably, I'm making an assumption here, but I get a lot of messages like, I want to make you aware of this product. And I'm like, no buying power. So we talk about a bit, Bruce, about what are they called? Handles. I'm really boring, and actually Chris is boring. We just go by our actual name. But you go by Gifted Lane. What was the story behind that?
So what happened with that is basically my better half, my significant other, created that. One day they came home and they were just like, hey, you know what? I think you're like someone who's like a gifted lane. And I was just like, what does that mean? And they're just like, because it's not until someone starts talking to me that they realize all the different stuff that I do. And I don't know. He's just really good at making up a whole bunch of good names. And it just kind of stuck. And then once he helped me create the logo for it, where it looks like a street sign, I was just like, yo, I rock with this. And so I just kind of tossed it out there and just went with it. So
Awesome. So these days, and we'll talk a little bit more about the journey, but like right now, as you said, you're working more in cloud. You're an associate cloud architect. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what that means. What does a cloud architect do? What's a day look like? Like, what's a normal day? What are you doing?
All right. So the first thing, I do like to talk about this, or would love to talk about it more, because I'm still figuring that out. I've been working in cloud now. I think this is like the 7th month for me. So it's only been 7 months and I'm still trying to figure it out. When I got into cloud, I was actually hired on as a cloud network engineer. Pretty straightforward. I'm doing networking in the cloud. And then fast forward 5 months, they're just like, hey, you're going to be a cloud architect now. And I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to be doing now? And I'm still figuring that out. And so I don't know if it's one of those, I'm pretty sure it's one of those positions where from company to company, it might mean something different. But for me, what I'm doing in my current position as a cloud associate architect is one of the things I do is I help manage partner relationships with Google, Amazon, and Microsoft. So I talk to them and, help build our partnerships and stuff like that. And then other things I do, like today, a ton of times I'm researching because let's say a client comes to us and they're just like, hey, these are the things we want. And then they're like, hey, Shala, we're going to put you on this project. And I go, okay, they want to work with, let's say, AWS Code Pipeline. I've never worked with that before. So that means, all right, I'm going to go spend all day researching and building stuff, breaking it. And then once I get a proof of concept working and I understand what I'm doing and it's doing what the customer wants, then I go build the thing that they need. So that's a good chunk of my day. I want to say what I'm supposed to be doing, if I strictly go off of like job description, is supposed to be where I architect or design solutions for companies that are trying to put their stuff in the cloud and they don't know how to do it. So it basically is a bunch of researching and breaking things all day.
That sounds like a dream to anybody nerdy. Get to research a bunch, break a lot of things.
I'm having a blast.
And then magic happens and it works.
Exactly.
Well, one of the questions I had is, what do you love about your current job? But it kind of is the discovery bit and the learning bit, or at least that's how it sounds. Yeah. If you could change anything about your job, what would it be?
Good question. What would I change? I don't know if this is the right answer, but the first answer that comes to me is if I could either A, clone myself, or go get the hyperbolic time chamber from Dragon Ball Z and use that so I could do all the studying I wanted to. Because, like, my biggest thing right now after getting into cloud, if I like had a way to redo it or pause time or something, I would spend time getting really good with Linux. That would be great because I work with it a lot, but I'm learning it as I'm working with it because I didn't really have to use Linux before. So, yeah.
Well, I'm sure Chris can tell you all the challenges.
I was gonna say that's the best way to learn it, though. I'm very much a like hands-on learner, so maybe that's bad advice for other folks. But yeah, so that's what I did, right? I mean, one of the first networks I built was for a wireless internet service provider, and we actually were so bootstrapped and so early days that we like wrote our own router code. Sounds way more interesting than it is. Like it was just hacked together like Perl scripts and stuff. But they were all they were all Linux boxes, like bridging routers that we were using to do this on. And so then I just started using only Linux on my machines because it just was easier to like understand like all this context of how all that works, for me anyway, to like do it all the time. And that's carried on for now. So I still like, but that's what Zoe was mentioning. I still run Linux desktop like full time, which for audiovisual recording is sometimes super fun.
Although you sound better than me apparently, so there's that. But no, I think I'm in the same boat as both of you actually. Is I have to be dropped into it because my motivation is the same. I need to be kind of in the deep end for me to be motivated to learn about it. But also when I get to the point where I'm like, oh, I know everything, not that I ever know anything, but I kind of feel like, okay, now I'm ready to move on because I get bored easily. Sounds like you're quite similar.
Yeah, for sure. And it's kind of funny because when I think back to what I'm doing now and I go all the way back to my college days, which, yes, college for me was like, it was some years ago. But like, I remember like my junior year going into senior year of college, I was just like, dude, all I want is someone to pay me money to just learn. Like, if I could just be a professional student, I'll be good. And I feel like cloud, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm getting paid to learn. I actually do stuff, but a good chunk of it is me learning and then going to do the stuff. And so it's this perfect marriage of what I wanted in a job. So I like that a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
That resonates with me hugely. I think that's kind of my grounding stone. Whenever I get into a point like in a job or a career where I'm really frustrated, that's kind of the question I ask. I look around, I'm like, am I learning?
Yeah.
Because if so, then maybe this is tolerable, right? But if my boss sucks or my team sucks or whatever's going on that I don't like, and I'm not learning, time to brush off the resume for me anyway.
Absolutely. Because I would say, except for one time, any job I left has either been because management, coworkers, or I was bored. I've never necessarily, I can't say I've ever left for like money. Like each time I do go find a job, the goal is to get more money, but that's never been the reason why I left. It's always because I'm bored. I'm bored. Or, you know, my early days, like in my early 20s, it was bad management. I was just like, I can't be here. Or bad coworkers. I was like, I can't, I no, I'm not working here. My coworkers suck.
Well, you spend so much of your day with them. You have to actually get on with them to a point. I mean, you don't have to be best friends, but they can't drive you crazy. How did you get to where you are? Because obviously you've been in industry for, I think it was 8 years or 8+ years. More recently in cloud for 7 months. So you're an expert now. But how did you get to that position, really? What was your journey, I suppose?
All right. So trying to see how far back. I guess I could start at the beginning. I really didn't break into like IT until 2013. I was working for a startup company where we built like mobile applications and web applications and stuff like that. I was working for them for like 2 years. They let me go in 2012, um, which was a fun story. I remember during my review, I asked for more money. And the answer was, we're going to, one Friday, they called me into the office and they're just like, we're going to help you out with the more money part by letting you go. And then you could go double or quadruple your money. I'm going to say at first, I was mad. I was upset. I didn't know what to do with that. But then I ran across them again and they were just like, oh, how are things? So I was like, you know what? You did help me because I did, like, at that particular moment, I had doubled what I was making there when I went to go work for somewhere else. So I was like, you know what? You did help me. So I'm not even mad at you anymore. And the new place that I went to work at is where I ended up working as a network engineer. I actually went there as an office admin. And then 6 months doing that job, our senior IT person retired. And the VP was just like, hey, do you want to take their spot? I said, yes. And next thing you know, I'm like sailing on ships in the ocean, fixing networks and stuff like that. And that was crazy. And so the only reason why I ended up leaving that job is because the company decided, which made perfect sense, that it was cheaper to sell all the ships as well as the crew with the ships and just charter them. So basically, my job went away. And the jobs that they had that they could place me in, I was like, okay, you want me to like start coming into the office on a regular and work in silos? Like, I'm not going to be happy. So I was like, it's time for me to go. So I left and I ended up going from network engineering to desktop support. And folks were just kind of like, wait, aren't you going backwards? And I was like, no, because this is my journey. They pay well. The work balance is awesome. I can sit there and go after my CCNA and all these other things while I figure out what I want to do next. Because I wasn't sure if I wanted to do networking because I was just like, the networking job I had working on the ships, I don't see another networking job matching that. I think I'm gonna get bored. And so, anyways, I spent 4 years doing desktop support. And finally, I had a friend that kept telling me back in 2019, you know, I think you should get in cloud. And I was just like, I don't know what cloud is. And I don't think that's what I want to do. Maybe just kind of brushed it off. But in 2021, like around September, I actually did cognitive behavioral therapy because it was being offered through the company I was with at the time for free. And I didn't know what I wanted to do career wise. So I tried it out. But anyways, it helped me create this career mind map. And that's when I decided, you know, to tap that same friend who was telling me to get in cloud. I was like, hey, it's 2021. I was like, hey, yeah, I wanna get in cloud. I think that's where I need to go next. And basically I tapped a few people that I knew who had been working in cloud for years. I was like, how do I start learning cloud? And majority of them pointed me to the same AWS SAA course. So I checked out the course, and next thing you know, I was doing the course and fell in love with it. And I started knowing what AWS was and how to use it and building my own projects. And so it's just like, all right, I'm ready. I need a job. So I just started keeping my ears and eyes open. And a friend of mine happened to post actually on Twitter saying just a general post to the world, like, hey, my company's hiring for, at all cloud levels. And I just reached out to them and I was like, are they hiring for cloud level 0? Because that's where I'm at. Like, I am Michael Scott of cloud, but I want to work in cloud. And so, anyways, I applied and I had to fight for it though, too, because they're just like, you don't have any cloud experience and no cloud certs, and you want me to hire you. And I'm like, yes. And I'm like, I don't, but like, here's my career mind map of how I'm going to get the knowledge. And then I was showing stuff like I created this thing called the Cloud Resume Challenge that they had never heard of. And I had it working and I did it my own way. And what else? Those kind of things, and so they gave me a shot. There's like, all right, we'll take a shot on you. And then also I had like my social media presence. I think that helped out a lot too. So yeah, that's how I got there.
Well, you've touched on a couple points that I do when I interview, because I've taken a couple of courses on unconscious bias. And the main point that they make is, you have to bring your bias to the front, but also look at why you're viewing something as success. So when somebody doesn't have as much experience, or I'm hiring for a more junior position, I always try to say, well, what have they done that maybe isn't directly related, but shows their motivation, shows the way they think, and shows the way that they learn? Because I want that diversity, right? So I want somebody that has a different skill set, a different way of thinking in my team to balance it out. But the point that you made about not just you built that like cloud,
the resume challenge.
Yeah, challenge, but also because that's showing, you're motivated to learn, but also your mindset of, okay, this is my career mapping and this is where I want to go. Because when I hire somebody, I'm not looking for somebody to do the here and now only. I want somebody to stay and be motivated to stay. So I want to understand their journey of why I want to get to this place. Is that going to fit within my team? So I really like that you touched on that, because I think I've seen quite a few people unhappy in their career. And I've been to them, like, what do you want in your career? Where do you want to go? And they don't have that mapping. I don't have that mapping, to be fair. But I like that you did that. I think I'm going to try doing that myself, actually.
Yeah, it was helpful because I didn't have that either. Like I said, it was virtual therapy sessions or whatever. And basically the way that therapy worked was just like, she was like, why are you doing this? And I was just like, I don't want to do networking anymore, but I don't know what I want to do career-wise next. And she was like, all right, so one way to figure that out is, what are your core values? What's important to you? And once I started listing out my core values, it was things like curiosity. I'm a very curious person. I love learning. Fun. Kind of fun I like to have costs money. So I need money, like a good amount of money. And I realized a lot of my cloud friends were making over 6 figures. And I was like, I need that. And then also they were working from home. And so I was like, I want to work remote as well, because then I can like go work from the beach or something. So that's how I got there. I was like, all right, cloud, let me figure this situation out.
No, that's really interesting. And I really like how it's not even technology related. It's, well, what do I want in my life? And what can I do to get there? So it's not careers taking the front in focus. It's, I want a career that enables me to be happy. I really like that.
Well, I want to dive back a little bit. There's a few things I want to get to forward as well, but I want to dive back to this. Shala, you're riding around on crude oil tankers fixing network problems. I mean, can you tell us a little bit more about what it's like to, operate a network or troubleshoot a network on a ship that's, floating, but I don't know if they're moving. I mean, I don't know what that situation looked like. I mean, you're like, I don't know. But yeah, I've never done that. What's going on there?
Yeah. So the fun part is when I took on that role, at that time, I didn't even know what an IP address was. Like, I've seen it before. I didn't know how to log into servers. I didn't know what to do with route. I knew nothing, right? So I had to learn everything baptism by fire. I did have a mentor where the senior person who left, there was a contractor who had been working with networking for years. he was still there, and he took me under his wing because he noticed I would ask him questions, take notes, and it turned into I'm not re-asking the same questions, but now we're able to have discussions. So he taught me, everything, which was awesome. But yeah, so what happened is, yes, the ships are moving. They're carrying oil from different places. Some of the ships were overseas, so I spent some time like in China, sailing around, fixing stuff over there. And then we had ships that were sailing along the west coast between California and Alaska. And what was that experience like? The first one is that one of the longest trips I took early on was 2 weeks. And that was all the way from Long Beach, California to Valdez, Alaska. And Valdez is like one of the highest, snowiest places in Alaska. And so it took 2 weeks to go there. It was in the winter because it was like right before Thanksgiving. So the water was really choppy, and I would go deep sea fishing with my dad on like little boats. So I've been in rocky waves, and I was just like, I'll be fine. I was not. I remember on that particular voyage, one of the reasons I was on there is because our satellite communications kept dropping. And so I'm on the satellite phone when it wasn't dropping, talking to a vendor trying to fix it while we're sailing in the ocean. And the ship would tilt so far to one side, you could actually do like, the Michael Jackson lean. So I'm doing that, and the vendor's on the phone, and he's like, try this, try that, in the land rack on the boat. And at one point, he just hears me like throwing up, like puking my brains out. And then we had worked together on a number of the ships in person. So he knew me, I knew him. We had a good rapport. He understood it was my first voyage. And I come back to the phone, I wipe myself off, and, a couple, he's like, welcome to the party.
Talk about baptism by something.
Exactly. And then I'm like, all right, I'm good. And, we go right back to doing all the things. So there's stuff like that. There's learning how not to get hurt. There's learning that I never want to be in a situation where you need to get into a lifeboat, because the way the lifeboats work, they're hanging on the side of the ship. And then when you need to actually use them, they tilt down and get shot into the water. And you're supposed to be in it while it does that. And sometimes there's like one classic YouTube video where like the lifeboat hit the water and then bounced into the air and flipped. And like, I'm like, no. I also learned about throwing life rings towards someone and not at them, because they're really heavy and you'll just knock them out, which is what you don't want to do. I was going to say, but yeah, the biggest thing about working on ships is I tell people my endpoints moved. So it could be stuff like a cloud going by. One time, a bunch of bees landed on one of the satellite domes and that blocked the signal. Or passing through a missile silo area that's nowhere marked on Google or anything, until I had to have the ship tell me, what are you seeing when you pass by this spot whenever the signal goes down? And they explained it. And I actually had to talk to like government people and figure out that, yeah, there's no kind of like,
No zone.
yeah. And when you look on Google, it's just water, and that's not what's there.
What? Google lies? What? That's not true. Oh, that's amazing. Well, it's always a good lesson to know what you don't want. One is lifeboats. I don't think I could survive working on a boat. I feel like I would get tossed over just by like, I don't know, sneezing too much. I'm not a huge fan of water, to be fair. I don't think I'd be a good fit. But one point you made was, both careers, you kind of jumped in without the core knowledge even, which is one, really impressive. But two, you mentioned having mentors and reaching out to people to learn more about their career and see if it's the right fit for you. Do you have any mentors that really influenced your careers, maybe sponsors as well? And how critical were they?
Yeah, so sponsors, no. but definitely mentors, supporters, I think would be like a good way to put it. But yeah, I definitely have. I have a few actually, but there's definitely I have like I would say three who have been like really big helps.
How did that work? Was that something where you reached out to people because you knew they were in that career? Or is it something that kind of naturally happened just by building a relationship?
Yeah, so I would say my first big mentor, and I still talk to them now, would be, of course, when I started the networking role. That just naturally happened because I remember the first time one of the ships, the network went down. Like we would just say, "Oh, a ship's down." Some people would be like, "Wait, is it sinking?" It's like, no. When we say down, the network's down. The ship's not sinking. But the first time a ship went down, he had to walk me through figuring out what the problem was, and it just became a natural mentorship. And then when it came to cloud, really it was just me being on social media sharing my CCNA journey. And I had where I would do like these global CCNA study sessions through Zoom, and I met a few people, and then I had a Discord server at one time for a Gifted Lane. And that's really where I cultivated a lot of like relationships where I actually talk to these people like in real life. Like they have my number, I have theirs, I've seen them in person, stuff like that. And I built a rapport with them, and it just naturally became a mentorship because the way I approach it, I wasn't someone who's just like, oh, let me see what this person does and see what I can get from them. What it was I didn't even know this person was working in cloud. So start there. I didn't even know they were working in cloud and that they have been working in cloud for years. They're just someone that I just vibed with. They were fun, whatever. And then come to find out they work in cloud. And I was just like, wait a minute. Hey, I want to get in cloud too, So it was just, we were already friends. So
Nice, nice. Yeah, well, like, I think I've had people reach out to me and they're like, "Oh, I need you to mentor me for this," and I'm like, "Okay, what are your questions? Like to try and build it." And it's really hard when it's like the mentor's trying to push knowledge. It's much more effective from my experience, limited, but when the mentee is saying, "I want to learn about this," or "I want to understand that," and you have that connection as well, because there is some chemistry needed. You can't hate each other. Um,
yeah.
Although maybe it would be very effective to learn quickly. I don't know.
Maybe.
We've heard quite a few really big achievements. Let's be honest, you've built two careers from the ground up essentially. But from your perspective, what are your greatest achievements or maybe one, two, whatever, your greatest achievements in your career so far?
Definitely with the networking job, my greatest one was when the company one first decided to send me by myself all the way to Singapore. And what it was is for the ships, what you have is every so often you have to take a ship and dry dock it. And when you dry dock it, you literally take the ship out of the water and you do all these different kind of repairs that need to be done to it. And so they're like, hey, we're going to send this ship over to Singapore. We're going to pull it out the water. And while it's out of service, out the water, we want you to replace all 22 desktops on board. We want you to rip out the old LAN rack and build a new, LAN rack that goes from the floor to the ceiling, put new routers, new switches, new firewalls. And also, we had no idea because the company I worked for was a really large oil and gas company, and they had their own IT. But what happened, the department I worked for with the ships was kind of like the stepchild that had got kicked out at one point because one of their ships ran aground in Alaska and spilled oil everywhere. And the way to escape PR was to kind of kick them out the company and give them a new name. So the IT I was doing was autonomous. Like I wasn't part of the larger organization IT, so to say. And so, anyways, the bigger IT company, the non-stepchild IT was like, hey, we want to see what happens if we put one of these new was it Dell? I think it was Dell, like a Dell Power Edge Hyper-V server thing on this ship and see what happens. And that's exactly how I said it. Cause I was just like, I don't know what that is. And I had to build it out, set it up, get it working. But I'm like way over there in the South China Sea. And the first moment I'm working with my mentor where I call up my mentor, I'm like, all right, I hooked up all the things. And he's like, all right, let me see if stuff is going to the data center here in the US. And it was. So that's when I fell in love with networking. That's a big
Ooh,
achievement.
yeah, that's a good feeling.
Yeah, that was a big achievement because I was scared on the plane ride just going to Singapore because I remember what was it like? It was literally the day before I left for Singapore. I'm telling my manager, my direct manager, his right hand, and our vice president, okay, we're all aware that I've never done anything like this before. So this could go really, really wrong. And I saw what the plane ticket cost because they flew me business class. So I was just like, we just all know I can screw this up, right? And they're just like, we have faith in you. And I'm like, well, I'm glad y'all do. So anyways, they're like, we've seen all your plans and contingencies and stuff like that. You'll be fine, which they did come in handy. And so that was a big achievement for me. It showed me like my own strength. And I guess the next biggest achievement would be me getting into cloud because I was just like, I'm going to try and see if I can get in. I was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't have the experience, but I'm going to try it.
Yeah. And here you are, which is awesome. And that's a piece of advice that we've gotten from some previous guests, some folks that are really senior in their careers now, maybe, 20 plus years in, which is, one, don't let a single requirement like on a job description or even a couple requirements stop you from applying. If you want the job, go apply for it. And we've had some comments on that on social media and stuff where other people have chimed in and said the same thing that, if you take a job that you're 100% qualified for, there's no growth. You already know how to do all that. So, I think you're doing exactly the right thing in technology, which is stretching yourself, right, on each kind of new assignment. And I think it's really refreshing and cool that you were able to, clear the air with the team and be like, hey, I'm not feeling totally confident about this. I've never done this before. Are you really sure you want to fly me business class to Singapore to handle this? I think that's a really cool way to kind of get in front of the imposter syndrome, maybe, right? Which is to just say, hey, let's all level set here. I've never done this before. Things could go weird. And, just being everybody eyes wide open. I really like that a lot.
Yeah, I have to say that is something I really do like about myself when it comes to career. And I say career because I'm actively trying to get better about this in my personal life. But when it comes to career, I will quickly tell you, I don't know. Like, I don't know. And I have no problem saying it. I don't feel bad. I've never had a situation where I said I didn't know. And then someone and it went negatively. It's always been, okay, look, I don't know. Let me go find out, or I know who does know, and I'll get back to you. And I'll make sure to get back to them. And so they still come to me for help, and my name still gets circulated within the company because they're just like, look, either Shala knows how to do it, or if she doesn't know how to do it, she's going to figure it out, but she'll also tell you she doesn't know how to do it. And I think that goes a long way with people because it's like, I'm not going to sell you smoke and mirrors. It's like, I don't know. Let me go figure it out.
I love it. For better or worse, though, I do know that we're just about out of time for today. Shala, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story with the Imposter Syndrome Network. And thank you to all our listeners for your attention and your support. If you want to support us even further, we'd love for you to share this episode or other episodes that you found valuable with your friends, colleagues, family, whoever you know who's out there who's looking for a career change, working in tech, thinking about a career in tech. We'd love for this to reach a lot of people and hopefully share the message and share everyone's passion around a little bit. Now, before we shut this whole thing down today, Shala, I would love to know, through everything you've done so far, what's the most valuable lesson you've learned in your career?
This I use both in my career and I use it in my personal life, and it's amazing. And that is when I start to feel overwhelmed, I just take a breath and I go, okay, my back's against the wall. I may not know what I'm doing. I feel like if I mess this up, it's going to go really wrong. But I'm like, you know what? Let's just apply some logic to this and just work the problem. Just work the problem. Don't allow myself to get too overwhelmed to where I'm just running around like my head's cut off. And that goes a long way.
I like it. Yeah, definitely. Take a breath, work the problem. Don't worry about it. Yeah, I like that a lot. Obviously, we know you're on Twitter at Gifted Lane. Do you have any, other projects or profiles that you'd like the network to know about?
Sure. So you can also find me on Instagram. That's actually where I started, and I'm getting back to it. So Instagram at Gifted Lane. I just started doing YouTube. That's at Gifted Lane as well. So there's only 3 videos. I'm just starting, but I am doing that. And then I'm also going to come off of hiatus and start back live streaming on Twitch. And that is also at Gifted Lane.
Cool. Well, we'll make sure there's links to all those things in the show notes for folks who couldn't quite listen fast enough and don't want to rewind. Excellent. With that, we will be back next week. I feel like buying yourself a new mic is kind of like buying yourself like a dress or a pantsuit or whatever you would have done in the past when you went to the office, to make yourself look nicer.
That's a good point.
I'm literally in sweats at the moment, so yeah.
Right. Yeah. Now that we don't have to get dressed up to go anywhere anymore, we have to buy like mics and video or equipment.
Not having to wear a bra most of the day is brilliant.
It
Absolutely brilliant. I imagine you have that huge issue as well, Chris, I'm sure. But
I do, yeah.
But yeah, it's lovely. Oh.
I bet.